Well, good morning. This is the Convo. Norm along with Mike. It is Sunday, November 13th, 2022. It's been a long 24 hours for Mr. P because he was in Toronto last night for an emotional evening. Corey Salming, the center of attention, and rightfully so. A very exhilarating and heartbreaking night. The Maple Leafs, thankfully, coming out with a 3-2 win over the Vancouver Canucks, coming from behind to win it. And the future Norris Trophy winner in Jordy Ben scoring what turned out to be the game-winning goal. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Norman. It was, emotional is an understatement, and we'll talk about that later on. But, as somebody who was old enough to actually have seen Bortuzzos Legacy play and in his prime,
right?
It was recently as I think it was 6 years ago or 5 years ago when they had the the Centennial Classic at BMO, and him being on the ice with the Leafs alumni against Detroit. It's just to see how ALS has ravaged him. This really is it's heartbreaking. But like I said, we'll talk about that later on. The team on in this case, let's just say that they don't make it easy on themselves, and they bring their fans along for the ride in terms of taking them through the ringer, because in spite of the fact that they're extremely talented, they also seem to have issues with getting up and being motivated. And we've already talked about this ad nauseum early in the year, because losing to Anaheim, losing to San Jose and Montreal and Arizona, and I don't care if Arizona's overachieving 500. They're the Arizona Coyotes. They suck. They're one of the worst teams in the league. You should beat them. And they didn't. And they didn't beat Anaheim, San Jose, or Montreal. And at times, even games that they have won, they don't show up for long stretches. And last night was another example of that. They fall behind Vancouver, who is struggling mightily right now. They fall behind 2-0. And they were getting stoned by Spencer Martin, their backup goaltender. And then slowly the Leafs sort of crawled back into the game, get the Austin Matthews goal, get the tying goal from Pierre Engvall on the scramble in front of the net, and then the eventual game winner from, like you said, the future Bobby Orr, Jordy Ben, who looks like Abe Lincoln skating around the ice with his beard. Then they preserved the lead, Vancouver had opportunities. It was sort of the Leafs. Once they got the 3 goals, it was sort of like, okay, we've done enough to win this game. Now, I just look at the way this team is playing, Norm, and I say, I'm wanting more. There are holes here that I think, I don't know whether they can be addressed internally, and they just leave you wanting. And the same team that can beat Boston and Carolina back to back like they did last week, and take Vegas, the best team in the league right now, to overtime, is the same team that has lost to those 4 teams and struggled against a struggling Pittsburgh team and barely beat a struggling Vancouver team.
This is the Convo. Norm along with Mike. Let's sum it up, Mike. The Leafs are consistently inconsistent.
Yes.
That's it.
I've used that phrase many a time, and it's a perfect illustration of where they are right now. And it's like, there's a number of factors. So obviously the goaltending situation is not ideal. Now, thankfully, it seems that they dodged a long-term bullet in the sense that Samsonov does not appear to be like a multi-week injury. Sheldon Keefe yesterday said, he's making progress. He didn't put a timetable on it, but it doesn't sound like he's going to be out long term. But they were forced this week. It was the Eric Shalgren show. He played the third period against Boston. He played Carolina. He played Vegas. He played Pittsburgh. And then he played back-to-back against Pittsburgh and Vancouver instead of going with Keith Petruzzelli. And I was talking over with some media members yesterday, and they got the feeling that they never intended to play Petruzzelli. The only thing was if Shalgren had faced 40 shots against the Penguins, then maybe they would have had to. But the whole intent was to go with Shalgren. It sounds like Matt Murray is scheduled to play against his old team in Pittsburgh on Tuesday.
So Shalgren gets this opportunity. What is he offering up in terms of his ability to potentially do more? What are you seeing?
I don't think,
I mean, he's done an admirable job.
Sure.
He has not shit the bed.
No.
Clearly, he has, like, which NHLer wouldn't have aspirations to one day, be the central figure in his own net. I'm sure that's a part of his mandate as a professional player. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that this is, a preview of what's potentially to come from his part, or if he is auditioning for a role like that. But it's considering everything that's going on with this team, the inconsistencies, some of the troubles the team is having, the way that we're kind of prognosticating more of the same and not exactly excited about what's to come, at least in this moment. Mm-hmm. Shalgren, I mean, I don't know, do we say it's been a surprise or a pleasant surprise, or he's lived up to the task, and we have to be thankful for that, or potentially he's done well enough in the exposure that he's been given, but any more of it, then he may become exposed.
Well, I think there's part of that already. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Eric Shalgren. I mean, they needed him to step into the gap with Murray hurt and with Samsonov hurt, and he's done that. They get the win against Boston, him in the third period. But I related that game to David Ayres playing against the Leafs with Carolina. It's like the Leafs blocked almost every shot. I think he faced 6 shots in that third period.
Well, they need to support their guy.
I'm not taking anything away from it, but they needed to. They sort of suck it up in a danger situation, and the team did, and they did similar. It was similar against Carolina, where you've got a third string goaltender playing against one of the best teams in the league, and they played well in front of him, and he played pretty well too. And I thought he played pretty decently again against Vegas on Tuesday. They gave up numerous breakaways. And he made a number of saves. I think the bloom was starting to come off the rose in the last 2 starts. The game, even Shalgren admitted that the goal, the Brock McGinn game winner in the third period against Pittsburgh on Friday, was not a good goal. It went through a screen. Giordano, sort of was trying to block the shot, but it went through the crook of his arm and near his glove. Not a good goal. I don't think he had much of an opportunity on the other 2 goals because, Justin Hall got danced around on both of them. And last night, honestly, I thought that the second goal was pretty weak, and he was very fortunate that the post was his friend on a Brock Besser.
5 goals in those 2 games, though, Mike. Back to back, 5 goals. The Leafs, with their score prowess, should outscore these teams. I don't care if it's Pittsburgh or Vancouver or Las Vegas or whatever. So yeah, we can examine every goal and pick it apart. He could have done this, he could have done that. And I'm not saying Shalgren is the savior and that he's all of a sudden revealed himself to be the straw that'll stir this drink. I'm just saying he's been up. It's been a positive. It hasn't been
Well,
negative, and he hasn't been exposed to the point where we're thinking, "Holy shit, we are totally fucked if these goaltenders don't come back and take over this net and play for a long period of time."
if on Sunday you
Right.
would have said to you and I, you're going to go 2-1-1 against Carolina, Vegas, Pittsburgh, and Vancouver, would you have taken it with Erik Källgren making all
Right.
4 starts? Yes, you would. But
Right.
am I all of a sudden saying, okay, forget Matt Murray, I'm all in on Erik Källgren? No.
No.
I think he's a good third stringer. He's now got about 20 games of NHL experience. And if Murray goes down again, or if Samsonov has an issue, you can get competent goaltending, but he's not going to stand on his head. That's all I'm saying. It's like
He's not Michael Hutchinson.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, no, he's not Michael Hutchinson. He can.
This is the So, guys, we started a little bit early today. I'm sure we'll have some people wanting to join us at 10. I put out an indicator on the community platform, youtube.com/the Leafs Convo. Mike and I have a few things to do, so we thought we would get the content rolling. We appreciate everybody in the chat. Just a couple of things that I wanted to get at here. Marcus Daly, Källgren's not an NHL goalie, a backup maybe. Could he be a bona fide backup? Mike, play 30-35 games a season?
I think he's sort of like a 2B. I think third string is perfect for him. I mean, the thing is, it's like eventually he's gonna, he's on an ELC because he was in Sweden for a while, and his contract enables him to go back and up and back without clearing waivers. I think that will be over with next year. So, he's either the backup or they probably lose him. And I still think that Joseph Woll is ahead of him on the depth chart. I mean, Joseph Woll had massive reconstructive shoulder surgery and is still not back. And right now you see, like, throughout the organization, now Petruzzelli, will be sent back probably on Tuesday if Matt Murray does start against Pittsburgh. But like right now throughout the organization, all their goalies were starting back-to-back games because the numbers were short.
Can I throw something out there? Dare I say Erik Källgren is more of a sure thing than Matt Murray right now?
Well, I mean, with Matt Murray, it's not. It's health.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I do think that the whole reason that we heard immediately after the injury that October 15th when he was hurt in the morning skate, and I was up there watching it. The reason they said minimum of a month was because they were going to put him on LTIR, which is 3.5 weeks or 3.5 weeks and 10 games.
Right.
And it may have been a 2-week injury, but I think this organization may have learned their lesson last year from Peter Mrazek. They brought Peter Mrazek back after 2 weeks,
right?
Re-injured the groin again and then he was out for 6 weeks. I think they wanted to make sure that Murray was slowly ramped up, that he was ready to go, and I think that was probably the reason why they hesitated in starting him yesterday. And now I think, he's on track to start on Tuesday in Pittsburgh. So, they gave him a few more days to make sure that he was ready.
And Källgren's presence, professional presence, is buying the organization some time with Murray. Why not? I mean, it's not an emergency to get one of these guys back, and keep your fingers crossed that they'll be able to stay healthy for a duration that makes us comfortable. A few more comments. Spike 10-1-1-1. If the Leafs beat Montreal, Arizona, and Anaheim, they would be in first place right now. It's just
San Jose. Don't forget San Jose.
Yeah, it's just it's been a common thing with this team for such a long period of time. They're consistently inconsistent, Mike. I hope that when the fearless foursome is finally broken up and they go their separate ways, or at least a few of them do, they will have accomplished what they wanted to accomplish, right? The thing is, it's an entire team that has to support these guys, and we know, look, they're the top 4 guys in scoring. They're going to get their 80 to 100 points, and they need the full complement of players to support them, ahead of them, behind them, in management. I'm hoping that when it's all said and done, these guys are able to hoist the cup or get to a position where they feel like they did all they could, and they're proud of what they were able to accomplish with the Maple Leafs. That might be in a year or two. Who knows? It could be in 10 years' time. And that's why we have these discussions on a weekly basis to analyze and examine and lament and hope and forecast what could be to come. It seems the common thing with this show and with other podcasts and any group of people who are following this team. There's just no sense of, we think this could be it, right? We think could be it because what we're seeing now is the development of a game, of a strategy, of a look, of a feel that could bear fruit. And it's just, again, it's not dire, it's not terrible, but the consistent inconsistencies of this team, are a frustrating thing, but a thing that we just have to deal with week in and week out.
The Toronto Maple Leafs are the hockey version of Groundhog Day. And that, I think, and
who's Bill Murray?
Well, I don't know. I mean, but I'm just saying it's this, you wake up in the morning and you hear "I Got You, Babe" on the radio every time. Right. It's like so. I mean, how many years in a row have we talked about the goaltending issues? If it was Freddie Anderson and playing him too much, or the backup Curtis McElhinney and they let him go, and then it's the Garrett Sparks who couldn't stop a beach ball, or and then Jack Campbell, and now Murray and Samsonov. Yep. And then it's the defense. Then it's you're paying the core for too much, right. And then you have every elimination game they lose. I mean, nothing has changed, and we don't know whether it will change. And just to stick with the goaltending here for a second, I grant your point regarding the uncertainty when it comes to Matt Murray. I still think Matt Murray is a better option than Jack Campbell was, signing him. Mm-hmm. And his, the beginning of his season in Edmonton has borne that out. I'm convinced that, quote, knock on wood, if he stays healthy, he will be above average in terms of his performance. But that's the problem. Like that caveat is, well, can he stay healthy? I mean, he stayed healthy last year after he was sent down to Belleville, and before he got concussed. And that's
in Belleville.
Well, he was sent to the American Hockey League. They sort of send him a shot across his bow.
30 nights in Belleville. What a shit show that must be.
Yeah. So I mean, we don't know what the future. I don't have my turban. I'm not Karnak the Magnificent. I just don't. I just know that Murray, all things being equal, if he's healthy, he's a better goaltender than Jack Campbell. But the question is whether he can stay healthy. And the whole purpose of the Murray-Samsonov situation was that Murray wouldn't get overplayed and that Samsonov wouldn't get overplayed. And then Murray got hurt and Samsonov had to play a ton of games, and he gets hurt. And now, both of them are out right now. But
neither is being overplayed.
And now, but the thing is, though, okay, you just mentioned the schedule for next week. 3 games with Pittsburgh, New Jersey, and Buffalo. So more than likely, you're going to have Murray play against Pittsburgh, Shalgren play against New Jersey, and Murray play against Buffalo.
Oh, and that's a loss at Scotiabank Arena. Just chalk that up too.
Right, but the point is that in spite of the fact that you've got days in between,
right?
Not all of a sudden they're gonna run with Murray and play him. They can't do it. So they're gonna give Shalgren work while Murray is back, and then when Samsonov is back, I believe they're gonna split 50-50 right down the middle.
Yeah, I'm just looking through some of the comments here. I've seen a few. Justin Hole's driving me to drink. I mean, you're not alone, Marcus. And then here, Mark P. Ben over Hall. I mean, Jordy Ben, 4 hits last night. He's literally the only guy besides Zach Aston Reese, I believe, or Kubel, whoever it was, who was throwing his weight around a little bit just to counter what Luke Shen was doing to Maple Leafs. He was just dropping them like flies. 12 hits last night. And then Ben scores a goal. He get 1 goal a season. He's in there to fill in for TJ Brody. So on a night that had a lot of emotional sentiments to it, this was also a nice little story too, Mike. And here's another player on the periphery chipping in to kind of help keep this thing on the tracks while everybody else gets back into form. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's weird because Jordy Ben is listed at 6'2", 201.
Right.
And if that's the case, he's the shortest 6'2" I've ever seen, because he was not much taller than I was. At least, I mean, he may have been leaning up against the wall, and maybe that was the thing. But, he didn't look like a particularly big defenseman. I mean, we know his brother Jamie is a big bruising.
Right.
I mean, okay, he had a really good game. Obviously, it was his first game of the year. He had been, he had a high ankle sprain, so he missed a good chunk of training camp, and he was going to be depended on as being a 7th defenseman, a guy he can play the left side, play the right side. He's got a lot of experience. I think over 500, so close to 600 NHL games. But he's not, I mean, as bad as Justin Hall is, Jordy Ben is not the answer. The problem here is that Justin Hall is playing top 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that we can glean out of this week is that the Leafs are going to give Timothy Liljegren a long-term look at being a top 4. Weren't sure that was going to be the case, but he's played a few games and mostly played with Morgan Rielly. Now, they mixed the pairings up yesterday because TJ Brody was out with a not serious injury, a day-to-day thing. And Ben stepped in for him. But when Brody is back, it would behoove the Leafs to not play Justin Hall in the top 4. But they seem to always have to. He plays over 20 minutes. He penalty kills. And, I mean, if you need any further example of, his quality or lack thereof on the blue line, look at the Pittsburgh game. The Malkin goal at the end of the first period, that was on Justin Hall. Malkin was his guy. Malkin burned him. Goal.
So are we figuring that Justin Hall he's just out of his element? If he were still being played to this level in 10 years, he would be out of his element. Or is he developing? With all of this time spent and being thrown into the fire to have to eat up these minutes based on Jake Muzzin being this close to retirement? I mean, can we cut the guy a bit of slack? I mean, he's exposed and he's obviously put in positions that he's not necessarily comfortable with, but he's out there, right? He's another guy who's out there in a time of need, right?
He's 30 years old, so there is no, he's developing. He is what he is. Now, my issue is, and my only defense of Justin Hall is he's a 5, 6, 7. He is
20 plus minutes a night, 5 minutes shorthand. This is part of the problem right now.
He's being overexposed, and that's the problem.
Okay, so again, I hate to cut you off, but this is you're in Buffalo, I'm in London, right? We're not face to face. Look, the guy is so again. This is something that's fundamentally wrong. We've got players who shouldn't be in these positions. Right. So when we analyze this team and expect more, should we really? When you have Erik Källgren playing, when you have Jordy Ben scoring game winners, when you have Justin Hall, someone we all believe is, a depth defenseman, playing these big minutes. So what the fuck are we complaining about? They're just basically holding down the fort.
We're complaining that the organization has basically known that they've needed a top 4 defenseman for most of the last 5 years and haven't gotten it.
And here we go. You know what? What's the remedy to that?
But I mean, in this instance, and I said at the beginning of the year going into the season that I thought their defense was the best that it's been in the Shanahan era, and that's because they added a veteran like Giordano to be on the bottom pairing, and you have Sandin and Liljegren who are coming around. Everything was thrown out of kilter with the injury to Muzzin, and because of the injury to Muzzin, you're not able to play Brody and Riley together on a top pairing. You've got to have Brody be a caretaker to Justin Hall because Justin Hall is being overplayed and playing 20 minutes a night. I mean, ideally, and maybe this will be the case. I mean, if Liljegren does grow into that role with Riley as a top pairing blue liner, then they have options. And we know that the Leafs are out there looking for defensive help. But as I wrote earlier this week, it's November the 13th. Teams aren't trading defensemen on November the 13th. Teams aren't going to start trading defensemen until probably Christmas, after the Christmas break into January, and as the deadline approaches. And the problem is that when those defensemen become available, they're going to be rentals.
Here's something, Mike. Chris Daniels and B-Rig also believe that Rasmus Sandin is leaving a lot to be desired. B-Rig even thinks Sandin is a letdown. He 17 and a half minutes of ice time last night, a giveaway, 4 hits. And I apologize. The defense was doing most of the physical work last night. Justin Hall 1 hit, Jamie Benn 4, Jordy Ben 4 hits, Timothy Liljegren 3, Morgan Riley with 5. Can you imagine this team without Morgan Riley? What the fuck would happen? And that's the thing. It's teetering, right, Mike? The team could catapult itself and just accelerate and go, and the offense could go crazy, and everyone else could tag along. Or this is like a house of cards that could come down if more guys go down.
Well, my argument has been that the most dependable defenseman on this team over the last few years has been TJ Brody. And TJ Brody sort of cures the ills on almost every pairing that he plays on. And he wasn't available yesterday. So what they did was they put Jordy Ben with Morgan Riley. It gave me flashbacks of Dion Phaneuf playing with Mike Kostka or Petr Granberg or Carbinian Holzer, playing your best defenseman with a guy who's, sort of balance it out. I mean, it's not ideal. But when you're down, you're arguably your most dependable and second most dependable defenseman in Muzzin and Brody. Those are the things that you have to do. And coincidentally, Liljegren played with Sandin, and I think actually Sandin had one of his better games of the year playing with his countrymen. But I do agree with the point that so far right now, Sandin is disappointed a little bit. I mean, and I don't agree with that. I think that's bullshit.
Okay, so there's a lot of this team is a letdown, right? A lot of what's happening right now. It just doesn't seem like it's coming together yet. They're second in the division, just kind of plodding along until something better happens or it gets worse. What the thing is the environment right for someone like Sandin to catch fire?
Well, what I was going to say is different players react differently to different situations. And, Timothy Liljegren misses the entire training camp with the hernia surgery. He comes in, and in his second game scores 2 goals and has played really well in a larger than expected role. Okay, Rasmus Sandin misses most of training camp with the holdout, and he is underachieved. Now, I'm sure that the critique of Sandin has been colored by the fact that he held out, that he didn't sign the contract and eventually did. But, Liljegren has, he's a year older, and he has grown into, I think, a pretty decent two-way defenseman. Sandin, I think, still has some growing to do, and that's the reason why he's playing with Giordano, because Giordano sort of covers up for his defensive inadequacies. But I mean, the right now the issue with this team is things just seem unsettled. If you notice, like all this week, Sheldon Keefe has got the forward lines in a mix master. The only line that's been staying static has been the fourth line. And even yesterday, they moved things around there. They elevated Morgan because he's been playing pretty well, But okay, you got Nylander playing with Matthews and Bunting. You've got Marner playing with Kerfoot and Tavares. The third line's been mixed around. So like, he's clearly not happy, he being Keefe, not happy with the consistency of the performance, and he's looking for a combination that works.
But
and
we know that regardless of how you configure the top four guys, you're always going to get some kind of offense from them. That has been historical. None of the four have gone dry for an extended period of time where we're scratching our heads and wondering if that particular player's time is done. It's the third line, right? What kind of generally the third line's a support line, but on an offensive based team, you still need offense from your third line, and you also need them to check. You need them to do a lot of the dirty stuff. And so those are actually that's really a difficult place to play within the lineup. It's that can be a problem. So again, consistently inconsistent, right? That's kind of the motto for this team right now. What is consistent though is the scoring amongst the top guys. It's the support players, and so the team feels like it's in transition right now, Mike, and it's obvious based on where it's at. Things could be better. Things could get worse. And here we go into another week. I don't know. That's the thing, right? When we're pointing out all of the team's deficiencies, all of the inadequacies, all of the things that are making it worse, who are we to expect or keep our fingers crossed and hope for some kind of breakout? It's, Saturday's done, Sunday's done, new week. Now it's go time. But wait a minute. We just pointed out all the reasons why this team it's prohibited from doing that kind of, having that kind of success. The idea is these things need to be righted first. These things to be improved upon or repaired before the rise to glory, if you know what I'm saying. Last couple of points, we'll finish with Bortuzzos Legacy.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I think that people have to recognize, and in spite of the Leafs failings early on in the season, we're at the 20% mark, 16 games. It's an 82 game season, so it's a little under 20%. Buffalo started off red hot. Now they've lost 5 in a row. Ottawa was supposed to be the team that challenged for a spot in the playoffs. They just lost Thomas Chabot. Their goaltending has been inconsistent. It's sort of right now like sort of a hodgepodge. Detroit's not doing badly, but I don't know how long that lasts. Montreal is 8-6-1. Okay, what does that all say? It's early. I get that. And the Leafs are in second place, as you said. They're 7 points behind Boston. Boston's going to cool down. Right. Boston is not as good as they're playing right now. But that being said, I mean, right now, you have to bank the points that, especially early in the season, because you don't know what you're going to go through in terms of injuries and things of that nature as the season goes along. That's why I keep harping on the fact that they gave up points. Out of 8 potential points, they got 2 against 4 of the worst teams in the league. And that you can never gain that back. That's the problem.
How does this team go on an extended confidence building, excitement inducing run when your platoon in net is, both of them are injured? You have a 39-year-old defenseman playing 21 minutes a night. You have a 30-year-old depth defenseman eating up tons of minutes and making tons of mistakes. How does it happen? Mike, that's the question. If this team continues to push forward in the way it is, what has to happen is Samsonov or Murray or both hopefully can get back and actually steady things in net. Not to say things have been tumultuous, but steady things in net, and keep as many guys healthy on the defensive end as possible. See Sandin emerge a little bit. Hall maybe a little bit less of him. Less could be more for him, and then just have the guys score like nuts, and then it gets on a run. I don't know when we're going to get to that point, Mike, but all you can really do is take it a game at a time and hope more guys come back and the process gets a little bit easier. Again, I still feel like the biggest issue with this team going forward is what's going to happen on defense, right? And we look at it and think the only real way to make any kind of appreciable change, any major change, is to make a transaction. And as you said, nobody's really doing any of that right now. And if the Leafs are going to do that down the line and put themselves in a position where they can bring somebody back of impact, that means somebody else of impact has to leave the fray. And I don't want to bring up the number 88's name, but and I also don't know if in season is the time to make that kind of change. So we push along with what we've got here, Mike. Borje Salming, 2 nights in a row, the Hall of Fame game, and then last night he was honored. That was unbelievably difficult to watch, and not because here's a guy who's dying of this awful disease, ALS, right in front of us, and it's uncomfortable. It was beautiful to watch because a beloved Maple Leaf who really is an inspiration and one of the greats in the game and a pioneer is here being honored. But a guy who was traditionally such a picture of strength,
Yeah.
to be reduced to that right before our eyes, it was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time.
Yeah, I've referred to Salming as a Swedish oak. I mean, he always looked like the. I mean, I remember when the Centennial Classic occurred in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
There was the alumni game between the Leafs alumni and the Detroit Red Wings alumni, and I saw him out there on the ice, and I'm like, can the Leafs sign this guy because he looks like he can still play?
Right.
And he was always, he always and you saw him with his family last night. And by the way, the reason for the dual ceremonies was apparently the Hockey Hall of Fame controlled the ceremony on Friday. That was a Hall of Fame ceremony. They had a number of Dino Ciccarelli and Eddie Balfour, and they had mats out there with Daryl Sittler supporting Borje. But that was obviously Borje in his current situation. They wanted him there, and that was a Hall of Fame controlled presentation. Last night was purely a Leaf presentation.
Real quick before you continue on, was there some discussion? It was just too much for Borje, too much of this emotional whirlwind on back-to-back nights. Did they feel like he was
I think
being like kind of paraded around?
No, it clearly, I mean, he brought his entire family with him. This was something that, I mean, apparently he wanted to do,
right?
That the organization wanted to do for him, and that his family wanted to have it done for him. So I think that everybody was on board, and he was clearly emotional at the reception of the fans at Scotiabank Arena, because it was
What was it like in there, Mike? When that was, because I texted you. What was that like?
Yeah, it was. I mean, very moving, and it's funny because Mike Zeisberger, who has covered the Leafs for years, said, if you're not shedding a tear, then you're not human. With what was going on with Borje, to see what has happened and to not be moved by, because I mean, arguably he's definitely in the top 4 or 5 Maple Leaf players of all time. I don't know where they that top 100 list had him, but I do believe that they had him relatively high.
Yeah, Alan Gwiatkowski, Hall of Fame trip, blew me away, cried like a baby. You're not the only one. Do you feel that there was a connection amongst the generations of fans and generations of media? So it wasn't just the Mike Zeisbergers and yourself out there who watched him play, but the younger guys who are running these podcasts and some of the kids in jerseys who've only heard of Borje Salming. Did you sense they felt it too?
I can't speak
Not
for
that
them.
it matters, but I'm wondering.
Yeah, no, I can't speak for them, but I think they know that the legend of Salming and the fact that he was the precursor of the great European invasion of the NHL, and that I mean, he was the inspiration for Nicholas Lidstrom. He was the inspiration for a number of Swedish players coming over. Now arguably it's Canadians, it's it's Americans, and it's Swedes. I mean, I think the Swedes are the 3rd highest percentage in the NHL, and that is due, a lot to Borje Salming. And we just had Jeff Merrick on the Off the Post show, and we're of a similar age, and he grew up in Toronto. I grew up in Buffalo, and Borje Salming was, he thinks, extremely consequential in the history of the league. Not only and my argument is that, like, in his peak years, which I would say probably would be, say, 77 to like 82 or 83, he was Larry Robinson and Dennis Potvin won Norris trophies those years. Salming finished second, I think, once or twice, and was definitely, in the same.
Was considered almost every year for a decade.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, I think it's not overstating it. If the Leafs had a dominating defenseman like Salming on their blue line right now, they would be the Stanley Cup favorite. But just to discuss the emotion in the building, the video presentation was fantastic. He had his entire family out there. It was, I mean, I was watching it on TV on Friday, and seeing the what wrecked me was the look on Daryl Sittler's face.
Right.
I think everybody, because it was Daryl. There was a picture after the game had started of Daryl, Lanny, Tiger Williams, and Borje, and that was the heart of that late 70s team before Harold Ballard and Punch Imlach destroyed it. And to my mind,
that beat the Islanders, right?
That's a team that beat the Islanders in 77, went to the conference final and lost to Montreal in 4 straight in 70.
How much fun would have that been to follow that group of players in the fucking 70s, man? What a time to be alive, right?
Yeah, but he, in my eyes, and I think most Leaf historians will acknowledge this, it's him and Tim Horton as the top pairing on the first All-Star team of Maple Leaf history. I don't think there's anybody else who comes close. Yeah. And
Morgan Riley may end up there one day.
He may.
I mean, he's such a workhorse. Yeah, and it's a testament to the preciousness of life, Mike, right? Chris Daniels, I'll probably get emotional when Sundin gets to that point. Hopefully that point is a healthy Matt Sundin for the rest of his life, and he's not robbed of the latter part by disease. So it's just, again, whether you go visit a family member in the hospital, or you're in hospice or convalescing, or at home, and you see the deterioration, or it's in front of millions of people, it's difficult to watch, but it's something beautiful about it too. It's a reminder that life is extremely precious. And we talk about the Maple Leafs, we get upset about them, we get frustrated, and then we move on. We have to put things into perspective as well. Do you want to encapsulate the show, Mike, with any thoughts, or do you want to get out of here?
Oh, let's go.
Okay, that'll do it. OG's Converts, don't forget to like the content, subscribe to the podcast. Mike and I may have a sneak show coming up here during the week. We'll give you like 5 minutes notice. And if we do that, you can guarantee that we'll be back here next Sunday morning. So for Mike, I'm Norm. Talk to you soon.